What if I told you there's a protocol hidden in plain sight at your local grocery store that has been shown in clinical settings to reduce knee pain by up to 42% in as little as 8 weeks? This isn't hype. This isn't another miracle cure. A groundbreaking study from the University of Chicago's Institute for Healthy Aging found that a specific combination of fruit enzymes could effectively rescaffold deteriorating joint cartilage. Imagine in less time than it takes for a season to change, feeling the stiffness in your morning routine melt away. Imagine climbing stairs without that dreaded bone-on-bone grinding. We're not talking about masking the pain with pills. We're not talking about expensive procedures or invasive treatments. We're talking about rebuilding from the inside out, using nature's own construction crew. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The 8 fruits we're about to discuss work as a team. Their power is unlocked in a specific sequence, like a master carpenter following a blueprint. You can't just throw them together and hope for the best. Missing even one step, or consuming them in the wrong order, is like building a brick wall without any mortar. You'll get all the bricks, but the entire structure will eventually crumble. This is why I must warn you. Please watch until the very end to get the complete, effective blueprint. Because the number 1 fruit on this list, the one that ties everything together, might surprise you. It's not what you think, and without it, everything else is just expensive produce. Today, you're going to meet a man who discovered this system by accident. A 67-year-old factory worker from Detroit, whose hands were so numb he couldn't hold his morning coffee without dropping it, whose knees sounded like a bag of crushed potato chips every time he stood up. This man went from feeling like a discarded machine to climbing hills with his daughter again. And it all started with understanding what was happening inside his body. Now let's take a breath. To understand why this works, we need to understand what's happening inside our bodies. After age 60, your body's collagen production doesn't just slow down. It hits a brick wall. Think of the collagen in your joints, like the air in a tire. For years, it's been slowly, imperceptibly leaking out. Collagen is the protein that provides the cushion in your knees, the flex in your tendons, and the insulation for your nerves. When it degrades, that cushion thins out. Nerves that used to be protected are now more exposed, leading to that tingling pins and needles feeling in your hands and feet. It's not your fault. It's not something you did wrong. It's a natural biological process that happens to all of us. This quiet collapse is the root cause behind so many of the frustrations you might be feeling. It's the reason why your legs feel heavy at the end of the day, why your balance feels a bit off, why simple tasks that used to be automatic now require thought and planning. It's a gentle, slow decline that one day you suddenly notice. But here's the key word, gentle. And our approach to rebuilding it will also start gently. We're not going to shock your system. We're going to work with your body's natural healing mechanisms, the same way a skilled craftsman works with the grain of the wood. You know, in construction, there's an old saying, measure twice, cut once. We can't just jump in and start heavy construction on your joints. A smart builder always preps the site first. This first phase is all about waking up your body's dormant systems and creating a safe environment for healing. It's about calming, protecting, and preparing. Think of your body right now like an old house that's been neglected for a while. The foundation is still solid, but it needs some gentle attention before we can start the major renovations. We're going to start with the most gentle, nurturing fruits, the ones that whisper to your cells rather than shout at them. Our first fruit isn't a powerhouse, it's a whisper. It's Amla, also known as the Indian gooseberry. Now I know what you're thinking. I've never heard of this fruit. That's exactly the point. While most people reach for an orange when they want vitamin C, Amla contains over 10 times the amount. But it's a different kind of power. It's non-acidic, incredibly gentle on a senior's digestive system, and it doesn't cause the jitters or stomach upset that some supplements can trigger. Think of Amla's vitamin C as the ignition key for your collagen engine. It doesn't floor the gas pedal. It just gently turns the key, letting the engine hum back to life. It signals to your body, hey, it's time to start making pro-collagen again, which is the precursor to the real thing. It's like waking up a sleeping giant very, very gently. The beauty of Amla is that it's safe and calming. You can have it first thing in the morning, maybe in a smoothie, or just eaten fresh if you can find it at an Indian grocery store. No jitters, no stomach upset, no dramatic side effects. Just a quiet, steady supply of the most fundamental building block your joints need to start their healing journey. Now that we've woken the system, we need to protect it. Think of black raspberries as your 24/7 security detail. Their deep, rich color, almost purple-black, comes from compounds called anthocyanins. These aren't just responsible for the color. They're your body's personal bodyguards. Here's what's happening inside your joints right now. You have little demolition crews in your body called MMP enzymes. Normally their job is to break down old damaged tissue so new tissue can grow in its place. It's like having a renovation crew that clears out the old drywall before putting up the new stuff. But as we age, these crews get a little overzealous. They start tearing down healthy cartilage too, like demolition workers who can't tell the difference between what needs to go and what should stay. The anthocyanins in black raspberries essentially walk up to these overzealous crews and say, "Okay guys, that's enough. This area is under new management now." They put a brake on unnecessary destruction, giving your body a chance to heal without constantly fighting against its own repair mechanisms. This fruit provides a sense of security for your joints. It's not about aggressive building at this stage. It's about creating a safe, protected space where the magic can happen later. Black raspberries are like having a wise old foreman on the job site who knows when to tell the workers to slow down and be more careful. You can find black raspberries frozen in most grocery stores, and they're delicious in smoothies or just eaten plain. They have a deeper, more complex flavor than regular red raspberries, and they're doing deep, complex work in your body. Foundation set protection in place. But here's the question I want you to ask yourself. Are you content with just not getting worse? Are you satisfied with simply slowing down the decline? Or do you want to actively get better? Do you want to reclaim what you thought was lost forever? Because what comes next isn't about playing defense anymore. We're about to go on the offense. We're about to bring in the heavy machinery, the raw materials and the skilled labor force to not just patch the holes in your joints, but to rebuild the entire structure stronger than it has been in a decade. And to show you the true power of this next phase, I need to introduce you to someone. A man who embodies everything we're talking about. A man who spent 4 decades building cars in Detroit, who knew what it meant to work with his hands to fix things that were broken, to never give up on a project, no matter how tough it got. His name is Kowalski. Art was 67 years old when his body started betraying him. The same hands that could tighten any bolt on an assembly line began to tingle and go numb, holding a simple coffee cup. The same knees that carried him across miles of concrete factory floors began to sound like a bag of crushed potato chips every time he stood up. Art thought his best days were behind him. His doctor told him to learn to manage it. But Art didn't know how to manage problems. He only knew how to fix them. And that's when he discovered the power of what I call the rebuilding crew. Art Kowalski spent 40 years on the line at a Detroit auto plant. 40 years of getting up at 4:30 a.m. 40 years of precision work. 40 years of taking pride in building something that would last. His hands, once strong enough to muscle a stubborn bolt into place, now tingled and went numb, just trying to hold his morning coffee cup steady. His knees, which once carried him across miles of concrete factory floors without complaint, now announced every step with a symphony of grinding and popping. That's how he described it to his daughter Maria Honey. It sounds like I've got a bag of crushed potato chips in my knees. But the worst part wasn't the pain. Art had dealt with pain before that came with the territory of factory work. The worst part was the loss of purpose. He couldn't kneel in his garden anymore to tend to the tomatoes he'd been growing for 20 years. He couldn't get down on the floor to play with his grandkids when they came to visit. He'd sit in his old recliner, the same chair he'd collapse into after every shift, and watch the world go by through his living room window. He felt like a machine that had been decommissioned, still functional in some ways, but no longer serving its purpose. His family doctor, a well-meaning but overworked man, handed him a prescription after a 5-minute examination. It's arthritis. Art, pretty common at your age. Learn to manage it. Take these when the pain gets bad. But managing wasn't in Art's vocabulary. You don't manage a squeaky belt in an engine, you fix it. You don't manage a misaligned wheel. You straighten it out. So Art started looking for answers. He found his way to Dr. Anya Sharma, a clinical nutritionist at Johns Hopkins, who specialized in age-related joint health. Dr. Sharma took one look at Art's medical history and said something that changed everything. Art, we're not going to manage this. We're going to rebuild it. She introduced him to Phase 2 of the protocol, the rebuilding crew. 3 fruits that would work together like a coordinated construction team, each with a specific job to do. Dr. Sharma explained it to Art this way. Your joints are like a construction site that's been cut off from its supply lines. The roads leading to the work site are blocked with debris. So even if we have the right materials, they can't get where they need to go. Blueberries became Art's highway patrol. The specific flavonoids in blueberries, compounds with names like quercetin and anthocyanin, boost something called nitric oxide production. Think of nitric oxide as a chemical snowplow that blasts open those tiny clogged capillaries in your legs and hands. For the first time in years, vital nutrients could actually reach the sites where Art's joints needed repair. Art started having a handful of blueberries every afternoon, imagining tiny construction trucks finally getting through to deliver their cargo. Within a few weeks, he noticed the tingling in his hands wasn't as constant. The supply lines were opening up. With the supply lines open, it was time to bring in the materials and the skilled workers. Strawberries, Dr. Sharma explained, are packed with manganese and a special form of vitamin C that works differently than what you get from oranges. Think of strawberries as your master masons, she told Art. They don't just deliver the bricks, they actively start laying them. The manganese in strawberries is essential for forming the crosslinks in collagen, the connections that make your joint cartilage strong and flexible, instead of brittle and weak. Meanwhile, the vitamin C works with specific amino acids to form the lattice of new, strong type 1 collagen, the good stuff that makes your joints feel young again. Art started adding strawberries to his morning routine, and he'd picture these little workers in hard hats inside his knees, carefully laying down fresh, flexible mortar between the joints. The mental image made him smile, which was something he hadn't done much of lately. But here's where Dr. Sharma really got Art's attention. Before you can rebuild, she said, you have to tear down the rotten parts, and Papaya is your demolition crew. Papaya contains an enzyme called papain, and papain is like having a gentle but relentless cleanup crew working 24/7 in your joints. It seeks out old, hardened, and useless protein deposits, the cellular equivalent of old rotted wood in a house, and dissolves them away. It's like having a team that can tell the difference between what needs to stay and what needs to go, clearing the way for new healthy tissue to grow in its place. This was the game changer for Art. Within 6 weeks of adding papaya to his daily routine, something remarkable happened. But what happened next wasn't loud or dramatic. It was something much more profound. The sound of silence. For 6 weeks, Art stuck to Dr. Sharma's plan religiously. A morning smoothie with papaya and strawberries, a handful of blueberries in the afternoon, and that gentle Amla powder mixed into his evening tea. He approached it the same way he'd approached every job in the factory, methodically, consistently, without expecting miracles overnight. He didn't expect fanfare. He didn't expect a dramatic moment of healing. He was just a man following instructions the same way he'd followed assembly line procedures for 4 decades. But sometimes the most profound changes happen quietly, almost without notice. It was a Tuesday morning in November. Art woke up, shuffled to the kitchen in his slippers, and started the coffee maker, the same routine he'd followed for years. When the coffee was ready, he walked back to his living room to sit in his recliner and watch the morning news, the same routine he'd followed since retirement. But when he got to his chair, he realized he'd forgotten to grab the remote control from the side table. So he stood up to get it. He braced himself the way he'd learned to do for the usual symphony of grinding and popping the bone-on-bone percussion that had become the soundtrack to his mornings. But there was nothing. Just silence. Art froze in place, standing next to his chair, remote control in hand. He slowly sat back down, then stood up again. Silence. He did it one more time, listening carefully for the familiar sounds of his deteriorating knees. Nothing but the quiet whisper of healthy joints moving the way they were designed to move. He didn't cheer. He didn't call anyone. He didn't even smile at first. He just stood there in the middle of his living room, remote control, still in his hand, processing what had just happened. Or rather, what hadn't happened. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of something he'd almost forgotten existed: hope. Not the loud, exciting kind of hope you feel when you buy a lottery ticket. This was different. This was quiet, warm and steady, like the feeling of coming home after a long day's work, to find everything exactly as it should be. He realized that the rebuilding crew had been working night shifts while he slept quietly, dismantling the old damaged parts and replacing them with new functional tissue. His body was remembering how to be strong again. That afternoon, when Maria called to check on him, Art told her about his silent morning. "You know what, honey, I think I'm ready for the next phase. I think I'm ready to get back to work." What Art didn't know was that Dr. Sharma had been saving the best for last. The final phase, the superchargers, would take him from simply functioning to actually thriving, and it would all lead to a moment on a hill that would change everything. That flicker of hope Art felt in his living room grew into something stronger over the following weeks. His morning routine became less about managing discomfort and more about anticipating what his body might be capable of. He started taking short walks around the block, then longer walks to the corner store. Each day his joints whispered a little more quietly, moved a little more smoothly. Then, on a crisp Saturday in December, his daughter Maria came to visit with a proposition that would test everything he'd rebuilt. She found him in his kitchen preparing his morning smoothie with the same methodical precision he'd once used to assemble car parts. "Dad," she said, leaning against the counter, "do you remember the big oak tree at the top of Belle Park? The one you used to race me to when I was little?" Art's heart sank. Belle Park. The tree at the top of the hill. He remembered it perfectly. A massive oak that had been there for over a century, standing sentinel over the Detroit River. As a younger man, he'd sprinted up that hill with Maria on his shoulders, both of them laughing as they raced to touch the rough bark of the ancient tree. But that was 20 years ago. That hill was steep, probably a quarter-mile of steady incline. It would be a trial by fire for knees that were just starting to remember how to function without pain. "I remember," he said quietly, his hands pausing on the blender. Maria stepped closer. "I was thinking maybe we could take a walk there today. Just see how far we get. No pressure." But Art could see it in her eyes. This wasn't just about a walk. This was about reclaiming a memory, about proving that the man who used to carry her on his shoulders was still in there somewhere. Art looked at his daughter, then at his nearly empty smoothie. He'd been following Dr. Sharma's protocol for 3 months. The foundation was solid. The rebuilding crew had done their work. But if he was going to tackle that hill, he needed to bring in the specialists. He needed what Dr. Sharma called the superchargers. "Give me an hour," Art told Maria. "I need to make a phone call." Dr. Sharma's advice was immediate and clear. Any big physical effort creates inflammation, Art. It's like starting a fire in your joints. But pineapple is your personal fire department. Pineapple contains a powerful enzyme called bromelain. And bromelain doesn't just reduce inflammation. It actively eats the inflammatory proteins before they can cause damage. Think of it as having a team of firefighters stationed inside your joints. Dr. Sharma explained, "The moment any cellular fire starts, they douse it immediately, so your muscles and joints can perform at their peak, without the usual inflammatory aftermath." Art spent the week leading up to the Belle Isle walk eating fresh pineapple daily. He could feel the difference. A deeper sense of readiness in his body, like having a safety net that would catch him if he pushed too hard. But for the raw power needed to climb that hill, Art needed something stronger. Dr. Sharma introduced him to Guava, a fruit that most Americans have never even tasted, but which contains 4 to 5 times the vitamin C of an orange. "Guava is your nuclear reactor," she told him. "It provides an overwhelming flood of the core building blocks your body needs to reinforce your cartilage and ligaments for demanding tasks. Think of it as pure, unadulterated fuel for reconstruction." Art found Guava at a Latin American grocery store near his house. It had a unique sweet tart flavor that he'd never experienced before, but he could almost feel the concentrated nutrition flooding his system. For 3 days before the walk, he made Guava the centerpiece of his morning routine. And then Dr. Sharma revealed the secret weapon, the #1 fruit that tied everything together. "Art," she said during their final consultation, "I need you to understand something. We could give you all the best building materials in the world, but if the foreman can't get them into the construction site properly, they're useless." Kiwi, she explained, contains a unique enzyme called actinidin. This enzyme is your master foreman. It enhances the absorption of all the amino acids from every other fruit you've been eating. It unlocks the full potential of everything else in your system. It ensures that every last bit of healing power gets delivered directly to your knee joints, instead of just passing through your systems. The morning of the Belle Isle walk, Art prepared what he privately called his supercharger smoothie: pineapple, guava, and kiwi, blended with the Amla powder that had started his journey. As he drank it, he felt like he was fueling up for the most important performance of his life. The day was clear and cold. Art and Maria drove to Belle Isle in comfortable silence, both of them knowing that this walk was about more than exercise. It was about proving that the past 3 months of careful nutrition had rebuilt something that everyone, including Art himself, had assumed was permanently broken. They stood at the bottom of the hill, looking up at the massive oak tree at the summit. Art took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill his lungs, and took his first step up the incline. It was tough. His heart rate climbed. His breathing became labored. But every time he expected that sharp stabbing pain in his knees, the bone-on-bone grinding that had defined his movement for so long, it wasn't there. He felt the burn of muscles working hard, but not the grinding of deteriorated joints. Step by step, breath by breath, he powered through. Maria walked beside him occasionally, reaching out to steady him, but never doubting that he would make it. Halfway up, Art paused to catch his breath and looked back at how far they'd come. Then he looked up at the oak tree, still waiting for them at the top. "Come on, Dad," Maria said softly. "We're almost there." 20 minutes later, Art Kowalski placed his hand on the rough bark of the oak tree he'd last touched 20 years ago. His legs were shaking from the effort, but they were strong. His knees were tired, but they were silent. Art didn't raise his arms in victory. He didn't shout or cheer. He just leaned his forehead against the ancient bark of the oak tree and closed his eyes, feeling the solid wood against his skin and the solid ground beneath his feet. Maria watched him from a few steps away, tears welling up in her eyes. She wasn't seeing a patient anymore. She wasn't seeing an old man struggling with arthritis. She was seeing the dad who had taught her how to ride a bike in this very park 30 years ago. The man who had carried her on his shoulders up this very hill. The man who had always made her feel safe and loved and protected. In that moment, under the shade of the old oak, Art wasn't thinking about collagen, or enzymes, or inflammation. He wasn't thinking about the specific fruits that had brought him to this point. He was thinking about the sun on his face, and the feel of the wind coming off the Detroit River. He was thinking about the sound of his own steady breathing, and the strength in his legs that had carried him here. He had not just walked up a hill. He had walked out of the prison that his own body had become. He had reclaimed not just his mobility, but his identity. He was no longer Art Kowalski, the retired factory worker with bad knees. He was Art Kowalski, the man who could still climb mountains when it mattered. "You did it, Dad," Maria said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. Art opened his eyes and turned to look at his daughter. "We did it," he corrected her. Then, after a pause, "I feel like myself again." The walk down the hill was easier, but Art took his time anyway. He wanted to savor every step, every moment of moving through the world without pain defining his experience. His knees were tired, but they moved smoothly and silently, like well-oiled machinery that had been properly maintained. That evening, as they sat in Art's living room sharing stories about their adventure, Maria said something that Art would remember for the rest of his life. "Today, you didn't just get your legs back, Dad. We got our dad back." Art realized she was right. The journey hadn't just been about eliminating pain or improving mobility. It had been about restoring a life. It had been about being able to stand tall, not just physically, but as the man he had always been, a man who didn't give up, who found solutions, who took care of the people he loved. The 8 fruits had given him more than stronger joints. They had given him back his role as a father, a grandfather, and a man who could still meet challenges head-on. They had restored his sense of purpose and his confidence in his own body. As he settled into his recliner that night, Art smiled. Tomorrow he would tend to his tomato plants. Next week, he would get down on the floor and play with his grandkids. The future was full of possibilities again. Art's story is powerful, but it's important to understand that it's not a one-in-a-million miracle. It's not some extraordinary exception that happened to one lucky person. Art's transformation is the result of a repeatable system based on how our bodies are designed to heal when we give them the right tools, in the right sequence. This isn't magic, it's biology. It's understanding that your body wants to be strong and pain-free, but it needs specific nutrients delivered in a specific way to rebuild what time and daily life have worn down. The foundation fruits prepare your system. The rebuilding crew does the heavy lifting. The superchargers maximize the results and help you tackle the challenges that matter most to you. You start gently with Amla and black raspberries to prepare your body and create a safe, healing environment. You bring in the workhorses, blueberries, strawberries, and papaya to open the supply lines, deliver the building materials, and clear away the cellular debris that's been holding you back. Finally, you finish with the powerful catalysts, pineapple guava, and the master key kiwi to seal the deal and maximize every bit of healing potential in your system. The beauty of this system is that it works with your body's existing repair mechanisms. You're not forcing anything or overwhelming your system with synthetic compounds. You're simply providing the specific nutrients your joints need to remember how to be young again. Look at the comments below this video. You'll see people just like you, just like Art, who were tired of being told to just manage their joint pain. They're ready to rebuild. They're part of a growing community of people who believe that our later years can be our strongest years, not our most limited ones. You're not alone on this journey. We are a community of people who refuse to accept that aging has to mean accepting pain and limitation. We're here to support each other, share our experiences, and celebrate every small victory along the way. So here's my question for you. What's your oak tree? What's that thing you used to do? That place you used to go? That person you used to be? That's been waiting for you to reclaim it. Maybe it's kneeling in your garden to plant flowers in the spring. Maybe it's dancing at your grandchild's wedding without worrying about your knees giving out. Maybe it's something as simple as walking through the grocery store without needing to lean on the cart for support, or getting up from your favorite chair without that moment of dread. Whatever it is, it's waiting for you. Your oak tree is still there at the top of your personal hill, ready for you to reach it again. You have a choice right now. You can close this video and go back to the same old routine, the same morning stiffness, the same afternoon fatigue, the same quiet acceptance that this is just how things are now. Or you can decide right here, right now, that your story isn't over. You can pick up this blueprint and start laying the first brick in your own rebuilding project. It starts small. A simple smoothie with some Amla powder. A handful of black raspberries with your breakfast. One small change that signals to your body that things are about to get better. If you're ready to take that first step, I want you to go to the comments right now and type blueprint. When you do that, you're not just typing a word. You're making a declaration. You're telling yourself and this community that you're ready to rebuild, that you believe your best days don't have to be behind you. Share this video with one person who needs to hear Art's story. Someone who's been told to just manage their joint pain. Someone who's been feeling like their body is betraying them. Give them the gift of hope and a practical plan to do something about it. And make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell, because in our next video, we're exposing the #1 healthy oil that's secretly causing rampant inflammation in your joints. This is information that could be sabotaging all your best efforts, and you cannot afford to miss it. Your story is not finished. Art's story wasn't finished when he thought it was. Your oak tree is waiting for you at the top of your hill. The only question is, are you ready to start climbing? Go write the next chapter. Start today.